What if the people you sacrificed everything for quietly erased you from their future? Madeline Whitman spent years holding her family together, paying their bills, fixing their home, showing up without being asked. But when she discovers her name is missing from her parents' will, replaced by the brother who never lifted a finger, everything changes. This is the story of what happens when the quiet one finally walks away. Not in anger, but in truth. Stay with us as we unravel a hauntingly real tale of betrayal, boundaries, and the quietest form of revenge, choosing yourself. Madeline hadn't planned to open the folder. She was only there to help her father scan some documents for his Medicare renewal. Just another errand in the long, invisible list of things she quietly managed. But as she moved through the pile of utility bills and pharmacy receipts, her eyes caught on a cream-colored folder. Thick and deliberate, labeled in her mother's looping script. Estate plan, final copy. The words thudded in her chest. She knew better. Knew this wasn't meant for her eyes. But when you've paid the property taxes for a house you don't live in and still get asked to pick up blood pressure meds on your way out, you stop caring about what's meant to be private. The folder opened with a clean snap. Inside was everything. Their home, paid off, remaining retirement accounts, a modest life insurance policy, all of it left to her brother Cody Whitman, 29 years old, no job, still living at home, a man who dropped out of 2 colleges, played guitar in a garage band that never saw a real gig, and occasionally posted song clips that struggled to break 200 views. Her name, Madeline Whitman, appeared once. One line, "We love both of our children equally and trust them to care for each other." That was it. No mention of the $11,000 she had wired 4 years ago to catch up their mortgage. No acknowledgement of the groceries she ordered weekly, the bills she auto-paid without being asked, the HVAC she replaced during a February cold snap before they even told her it was broken. Nothing. Not even a thank you. Her hand didn't shake, but her breath caught as the scanner hummed beside her. Still, she stood there, staring at the page, her fingers frozen over the crisp, notarized document dated just 2 months earlier. "Getting through that stack, Mads?" her father called from the kitchen, voice casual as ever. She held up the folder. "Is this how it is, Dad?" she asked, her voice quieter than she expected. "Everything to Cody?" The silence that followed told her everything. He walked back into the room, a mug of coffee in his hand halfway to his lips. When he saw what she was holding, he stopped. Then came the sigh, long, tired, familiar, the kind that said he'd known this moment was coming. "It's not what you think," he said. She didn't answer, because it was exactly what she thought. He looked at her, the way a man looks at a leaking pipe, hoping it'll hold just a little longer without him needing to fix it. "We figured you'd understand," he said. "You're doing well, Madeline. You've always done well." There it was, the old refrain, the family's favorite lullaby to quiet guilt. "You've always done well." Translation, you don't get to want anything. Madeline didn't scream, didn't argue. She simply placed the folder back on the table and walked outside. The porch swing creaked as she sat down, a swing she had installed herself 2 summers ago when the old one collapsed, and Cody claimed he was between paychecks. Same summer she paid for a contractor to fix the deck railing, same week actually. She gazed across the yard to the oak tree where Cody had once carved CW plus KR, for a girl he barely remembered now. Had he ever paid to have that tree trimmed? Did he even know it cost $800, 0 cents, when a storm nearly split it in half last year? Probably not. Why would he? He never had to carry anything, because she always did. And in that moment, on that porch, the truth settled into her like dust. They hadn't just chosen Cody, They had already priced her out of the story. Let me know if you'd like to proceed directly with Chapter 1, Part 2, or make any adjustments. You said, Hey, Viet Chapter 1, PHAN, tutio dundan yi, da chotoi tutai la 600 tutio tutta lenma kong no 9 mu kwa kao chuk nyo. ChatGPT said, Chapter 1, Part 2, the folder that changed everything. The door creaked behind her a few minutes later. Her mother's footsteps were soft, careful, like she was stepping into a fragile moment that might shatter if she moved too quickly. Madeline didn't look up. She didn't have to. She knew that cardigan, the pale blue one her mother always wore when something hard needed thing. The same one from Christmas 5 years ago, when Madeline gave her a Visa gift card and Cody gave her a burned CD labeled Demo 2. Her mother had said she loved them both. Madeline, Eleanor said. Not quite soft, not quite sharp. Still, Madeline didn't turn her head. Her mother sat beside her anyway, the swing dipping slightly under her weight. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Only the creak of chain and the rustle of early autumn leaves filled the silence. We didn't mean for you to find out that way, her mother said finally. Madeline nodded. Just once. Eleanor reached out, her hand warm, trembling, resting lightly on Madeline's. It felt like a gesture, rehearsed more than felt. It's not that we don't love you, she whispered. Madeline stared straight ahead, her voice even. What do you call love that forgets you when it counts? Her mother flinched, but didn't pull her hand back. You've always been steady, sweetheart, she said. Strong. We've never had to worry about you. Madeline's jaw tensed. No, you just relied on it. The swing groaned beneath them again. A wind stirred through the branches of the oak tree, sending a few dry leaves spiraling to the ground. We had to co-sign for Cody, Eleanor said at last. The words were quiet, as though saying them gently would soften the blow. He needed help. Madeline turned to look at her mother for the first time. Her voice didn't rise, didn't waver. How much? Eleanor looked down at her lap, said nothing. Mom? Madeline repeated. How much? A long pause. Then, even softer, 35,000. Madeline stood up. The swing bounced slightly as she let go of the chain. The porch boards creaked under her feet, familiar and worn from years of footfalls. Hers, Cody's, their parents'. She'd stained them herself one summer. Alone. 35,000. So it wasn't just emotional loyalty. It wasn't just favoritism. They were financially tied to him. They had made their choice long before any will was drafted. You didn't choose him because he needed it, she said, eyes locked on her mother's. You chose him because you already owed it to him. Her mother blinked rapidly, like she hadn't expected those words. But Madeline didn't wait for a reply. There was nothing else to say. Inside, the scanner continued its slow, rhythmic hum, still processing the documents she'd set down earlier. The sound, once mundane, now felt like a machine printing out her erasure 1 page at a time. She walked down the steps without looking back. The wind had picked up. Somewhere in the distance, a neighbor's wind chime rang once, then fell silent again. That night, back in her apartment, Madeline didn't cry. She didn't rage. Instead, she logged into the bank portal and canceled the auto deposit she'd set up for her parents' utility bills. She deleted the calendar reminders to refill their medications, paused the Thursday grocery delivery, and silenced their message thread on her phone. No announcements, no confrontations, just quiet subtraction, a gradual disappearing. They wouldn't notice right away. They'd think she was busy, maybe tired from work. Maybe they'd assume she needed space and would come back, like always. But she wouldn't, because this time they hadn't just hurt her. They'd made it clear she didn't matter. And she wasn't going to keep showing up just to prove them wrong. She wasn't going to carry a house that had never truly been hers. Not anymore. Not ever again. The first thing she deleted was the grocery list. It was a shared document, stored in a cloud folder labeled Home Essentials, though it hadn't been her home in over a decade. Every Thursday at 4 p.m., a delivery arrived on her parents' doorstep. Low-sodium crackers for her father, almond milk for her mother, and 3 pints of ice cream Cody liked but never paid for. She had created that list, managed it, updated it, funded it. Now she clicked delete. The page vanished from her screen as if it had never existed. Then came the bank app. The autopay accounts she'd quietly maintained for over 7 years, electricity, water, gas, the occasional copay, all set to 0. Her thumb hovered over the confirmation button for only a second before she tapped it. She didn't flinch. The final thing was the reminder, reorder Mom's blood pressure meds. She'd had that one pinned since 2019, right after her mother was hospitalized, and Cody forgot to mention it until after discharge. That winter, Madeline had driven 4 hours in an ice storm just to make sure someone was there when her mother got home. Now, she unpinned it, then deleted it. The silence in her apartment felt different. Not peaceful, not yet, but clean. She sat by the window, watching the lights of downtown Nashville flicker to life as the sun slipped behind the skyline. The sky turned pink at the edges like something bruised. A full week passed without contact. It was the quietest her life had been in years. She slept better, woke up not checking her phone for emergencies that weren't hers to solve. She made coffee just for herself, let laundry pile up, and didn't feel guilty. She even watched a movie one night without pausing halfway through to reorder dog food or dispute a billing charge her parents didn't understand. But the second week, the texts began. The first came from her father. Water bill came in higher than usual. Can you check the account? She didn't respond. Then, 2 days later, her mother, "We're out of those crackers you always bring. Cody forgot again." Madeline left it unread. There was no panic in the messages, not yet. Just the assumption that she was there, that she was functioning like always. Quiet, reliable, invisible. The emotional version of plumbing, only noticed when it stopped working. By the end of the second week, the tone shifted. Her mother's next message was shorter, more direct. "The mortgage is due. Can you send what you usually do? No greeting, no how are you, just a number." A need. Madeline stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, "Ask Cody. It's his house now." She hit send. Didn't wait. 5 minutes later, her mother called. She let it ring. Then came another message. "Please, don't be like this. We need to talk." But there was nothing left to talk about. They had made their decision, and for once, Madeline was going to live like it mattered, like she believed them. That night, she turned off her phone and left it in the kitchen drawer. She poured herself a glass of wine, curled up on the couch with a blanket, and sat in the dark. Just herself, the quiet, and the absence of weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. The next morning, the sun filled her apartment before she even opened her eyes. It was a kind of freedom she hadn't expected to feel. Like stepping out of a storm you hadn't known you'd been walking through and discovering, for the first time, the sky could be clear. By the third week, the messages weren't just routine. They were desperate. Her mother no longer softened her tone. The next text came mid-morning on a Tuesday. "Mortgage is past due. Penalties applied. Can you please handle it like usual?" No punctuation, no warmth, just a prompt, as though Madeline was still part of a machine they expected to run on schedule. This time, she didn't hesitate. She typed, "Ask Cody. He's the one you left everything to," then hit send. Again, no waiting. Within minutes, her phone buzzed with another call. Then another. She let both ring out. The voicemail that followed was just as predictable. We could lose the house if you don't help us. Madeline stared at the wall. It wasn't anger she felt. Not satisfaction either. Just exhaustion, a weariness that didn't beg to be fixed anymore. They weren't losing the house. They were losing access. Access to her time, her money, her presence. They weren't homeless. They were uncomfortable. For the first time, they were meeting the cost of what she used to absorb without question. What they called help had always been dependence. What they saw as her duty had been their design. That evening, another name lit up her phone. Cody. The message was exactly what she expected. Danny, don't make this a big deal. Just help them like always. Like always. Like clockwork, like background noise that never asked for credit, just kept humming while the others lived loudly. Madeline. Read it once, twice, then typed, "You're the one they chose, Cody, so be the choice." No reply. Not the next day. Not the one after. But the silence didn't feel like peace anymore. It felt like a fuse burning toward something. 2 mornings later, the inevitable arrived, a transfer request notification, $3,200.00, the exact amount of the overdue mortgage plus late fees. There was no message attached, no explanation, just the number. Madeline declined it without blinking. The phone rang instantly. Again, she let it go. Then came the final text from her father. "You'd let your own parents go homeless?" It almost made her laugh. Because for years she had kept them afloat, quietly, reliably, invisibly. They hadn't been abandoned. They'd been sheltered. But when they chose Cody, when they erased her from every page of their future, they also discarded the very foundation they'd stood on. And now they were demanding rescue from someone they no longer recognized until it served them. She turned off her phone again. Another day passed. Then another. No calls, no voicemails. The house, once so present in her life, began to feel like an address she no longer remembered how to get to. She went for a walk that Sunday. No destination in mind, just the steady rhythm of her steps against the sidewalk. Her breath in the air. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she owed anyone anything. And in that space where obligation used to live, something else began to take root. Something quiet. Something resolute. She wasn't their fallback anymore. She was her own beginning. The receptionist's voice was calm, almost apologetic. "Miss Whitman, your parents are downstairs, and a man who says he's your brother." Madeline stared at the email she'd been drafting, her fingers hovering motionless over the keyboard. The cursor blinked patiently. She blinked back once. Twice. "They said it's urgent," the receptionist added gently. Madeline stood up from her desk, smoothed her blazer, and walked out of her office like nothing had happened. She didn't rush. She didn't ask why they were here. She already knew. The mortgage notice must have hit harder than they expected. And guilt? Guilt only worked so long as you kept the door cracked open. She took the elevator to the lobby floor, heart steady, mind sharper than it had been in weeks. They were standing just inside the main glass doors, clustered together like a tableau, trying to look composed but already unraveling. Her father, Richard, stood ramrod straight, arms stiff at his sides, jaw tight like he was preparing a lecture he hadn't rehearsed well enough. Eleanor gripped her purse in both hands, eyes darting from face to face as people passed by. Cody slouched against the wall, head down, earbuds still in like he couldn't quite commit to the reality of being there. The doors opened with a mechanical hiss. They all turned toward her. She didn't speak, didn't move closer. She stopped 10 feet from them, arms crossed, posture composed. "Madeline," Eleanor said quickly, her voice high and brittle. "We need to talk." Madeline tilted her head slightly. "You came all the way down here to say that? We didn't know what else to do." Richard cut in. "You wouldn't answer the phone." Madeline glanced toward the glass entrance, then back at them. "So now you're waiting in my office lobby like it's a doctor's appointment?" Her father's nostrils flared. "This isn't a joke." "No," she said. But it is familiar. Eleanor stepped forward. We're losing the house. You're losing access, Madeline replied. To me, to what I gave. You still have each other. That was your choice. Richard's hands moved to his hips. You'd really let your parents lose everything over this? She inhaled through her nose, slowly. You really thought I wouldn't? No one said anything, not even Cody. I was good enough to fix things, she continued, but not good enough to be remembered when it mattered. You've always been strong, Eleanor said softly. We thought you'd understand. Madeline nodded once. You used that as an excuse to forget me. From the corner of her eye, she saw a coworker glance toward them before looking away politely. The lobby's marble floor gleamed under the lights. Her heels clicked once as she shifted her feet, and the sound felt louder than any of their words. Cody finally spoke, barely above a murmur. I didn't ask for this. She looked at him fully for the first time. But you took it. He looked away, as if shame, when acknowledged, might dissolve into something easier. Madeline turned her attention back to her parents. You wrote me out. You handed everything to him. Now you're asking me to do what I've always done, without recognition, without thanks. We fed you, Richard snapped, voice rising. We raised you. You owe us something. Madeline almost laughed. I paid that debt every month, every year, quietly, while you bragged about your son's creative journey and forgot to mention who was keeping your lights on. Eleanor's lip trembled. We didn't mean to hurt you. Then why did you wait until I disappeared before realizing I was the one holding it all up? No one had an answer, and Madeline didn't need one. Cody shifted awkwardly, finally pulling the earbuds from his ears, letting them hang uselessly around his neck. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but Madeline had already turned away from him. She wasn't here to make room for his confusion. She was done translating silence into understanding. Eleanor stepped forward again, her hand outstretched as if reaching would somehow rewind everything. Can we at least go upstairs? Just talk somewhere private? Madeline didn't move. No. Her mother blinked. What do you mean? I mean you're not coming up, Madeline said, her voice calm, deliberate. You're not stepping into my space. You're not turning my office into another version of the living room where I get asked for more while being told I already have enough. Richard exhaled sharply. This is ridiculous. Madeline's eyes flicked toward him. What's ridiculous is thinking you could take everything I gave for granted and still expect more. Behind her, the elevator chimed. A group of interns passed through the turnstiles, laughing. No one gave the family trio more than a glance, but Madeline felt their presence all the same. A contrast so stark, it made her next words taste sharper in her mouth. You're not victims, she said. You're just uncomfortable now that your safety net is gone. Cody muttered under his breath. It wasn't supposed to go like this. Madeline turned back to him. You mean I wasn't supposed to stop? He didn't answer. Her father's posture was stiff, his hands clenched at his sides. We gave you everything we could. No, Madeline said. You gave what looked good from the outside. Food, clothes, school. But not space. Not belief, and definitely not fairness. Eleanor's voice cracked. We're still your parents. Yes, Madeline said. And I was still your daughter when I paid your mortgage and picked up your prescriptions and covered for Cody's failed side hustles. But that didn't count, did it? Not when it came time to put it in writing. Richard opened his mouth, but she didn't give him the chance. You made your choice. I'm just honoring it. She stepped toward the glass doors, sunlight spilling in from the city street beyond. Her reflection appeared for a moment beside theirs, faint, clean, and separate. Cody reached for the handle as if to follow. She raised a hand. Don't. He froze. You're not coming in, she said again, quieter now. You're not coming into my life, my office, or my peace with another request, dressed as reconciliation. The doors slid open. She stepped out, letting the light and traffic and real air fill her lungs. For a brief moment, she thought she heard her mother's voice call her name, but she didn't stop. She didn't turn back. They stood inside, 3 people still trying to perform family in a place where it no longer applied. Her phone buzzed in her bag. She didn't need to look. She knew the messages would come. Again and again, cycling through guilt and anger and desperation. But none of it mattered now. They hadn't lost her when they changed the will. They lost her when they bet everything on the one child who gave the least and assumed the other would never walk away. And now that she had, they were discovering what her absence really cost. The automatic doors closed behind her with a soft hiss. She didn't look back. Not once. The house was on the market. Madeline didn't hear it from them. Of course not. She found it the way everyone else did. By accident. A listing link popped up on her feed, shared by a distant cousin with the caption, "Tough decisions in tough times. Please share. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, motivated sellers." The photos were a gut punch in high definition. She clicked through them slowly. The kitchen still had the cabinet handles she installed when her mother said she wanted to modernize but cheap. The porch had the same swing she paid to replace, though now it creaked visibly in the breeze. Even the living room showed the rug she'd gifted them for their anniversary, the one they forgot to thank her for. It was all still there, everything but her. The description was brief and polished. Charming family home full of love and memories. Owners downsizing due to recent life transitions. She laughed out loud at that. Sharp and humorless downsizing. A word that made financial collapse sound like a spring cleaning. But it wasn't the listing that hit the hardest, it was the comments. Dozens of them. "Hope you land somewhere even better, Eleanor. Richard, let me know if you need anything at all. Praying for peace for your family." And then came Cody. He had reshared the post to his personal page with a caption that made her stomach knot. Some people think family is about money, but real family shows up when it's hard. Below that, emojis, hearts, encouragements. A flood of support for the one who hadn't lifted a finger to keep the place standing. Madeline stared at the screen, motionless. They weren't just navigating hardship, they were writing her out of the story altogether. She scrolled farther. More posts. More curated tragedy. Her mother had posted a photo of the porch at sunset, with a sunflower emoji and the line, "We raise them with love. Sometimes love isn't enough." The implication was surgical, clean. No names, no direct blame. But the message? Clear as glass to anyone who knew them. Clearer still to the daughter, who used to fund their groceries. Madeline closed the laptop. She sat in silence for several minutes, the hum of her apartment filling in the gaps. She thought about the stories we tell, how easily they can be edited, reworded, how grief can be staged like theater, and how the people who keep things running in the background are always the easiest to erase. The knock came just before noon the next day, not on her door, but on her sense of stillness. An envelope slid through the mail slot. No return address, plain beige paper. Inside, a copy of the foreclosure notice. Not addressed to her, but she didn't need a name. She recognized the house number. The amount overdue, the timeline. They had burned through everything, her savings, the life insurance policy, whatever money had been left in Richard's pension account, and Cody had spent it like he always did, like it would magically refill. She flipped the notice over and stared at the blank side. Then, with a pen she didn't remember picking up, she scrawled a single line. "Maybe you should have left it to someone who could manage it." She didn't send it. But she didn't throw it away either. Some truths didn't need to be mailed. They just needed to be written. Once, so that she could stop carrying them. Later that evening, Madeline poured herself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table with the lights off. Outside, the city buzzed with the usual Friday night restlessness. cars threading through intersections, laughter from a rooftop bar, someone yelling 2 streets over. But in her apartment, it was still and dark and clean in a way that made her feel like she'd finally stopped bleeding into everyone else's life. She powered on her laptop again. She didn't check the house listing. She didn't look at her parents' page or Cody's time. She didn't need to. She knew the story they were building, the one where she was the selfish daughter who disappeared when things got hard. A few days earlier, her Aunt Lori had left a voicemail. Measured and non-committal, as always. "I'm not taking sides, sweetheart, but your mom's worried sick. Maybe just talk to them?" Madeline hadn't responded. She'd scrolled past it with the same numb detachment she used to have when Cody would ask for cash with a vague "I'll pay you back later." She used to believe those IOUs meant something. Now she knew better. She wasn't the villain. She was just no longer the hero of a story that didn't want her in it. The next morning, she walked to the corner cafe, ordered a black coffee, and took it to the park nearby. She sat under the tree line with a small notebook, one she hadn't opened in months. It still had notes from work meetings, half a grocery list, and a scribbled recipe from her mother's handwriting, banana bread she'd never make again. Madeline flipped to a blank page and started writing. Not a diary entry, not a letter to them, just fragments. "Things you don't owe people who call themselves family," she listed. "Explanations for your boundaries, emergency money on demand, silence in exchange for peace. The version of you they prefer," she wrote until the coffee went cold. When she looked up, the trees were shifting with a slow, deliberate wind. Nashville in late October always had this in-between quality. Summer hadn't fully let go, but fall had already claimed the air. It reminded her of everything she was learning, how grief and relief could share the same breath. Back home, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was from Kelly, her cousin, the one who once called her the glue in this family. She hadn't messaged since the fallout, but now, a screenshot. It was a new post. Her father, again. "We gave everything to our children, time, money, love. We thought we raised them right, but in the end, you can't control who turns their back on you." He had tagged Madeline. No message, no call, just public narrative, carefully crafted. Kelly had written under the screenshot, "This isn't okay. I'm so sorry." Madeline stared at the screen. It wasn't the betrayal that stung. It was the clarity. They weren't trying to repair anything. They were positioning themselves as martyrs, painting her absence as cruelty, not consequence. She looked around her apartment, the corners she'd made her own, the plants she'd kept alive, the shelves she had assembled by herself after a 12-hour workday. No one saw this version of her. No one ever had. Just the role she played. Caretaker, fixer, ghost. But not anymore. She picked up the foreclosure notice again, folded it once, slid it into a drawer she didn't plan to open again. She had been written out of their legacy, so she would start writing her own. It happened on a Thursday. Thursdays used to mean deliveries, groceries, prescription refills, bulk packs of Cody's favorite snacks. Madeline had built a whole system around keeping her family afloat, quietly, automatically. But now the only thing that showed up at her building was them. She was halfway through a quarterly review when the receptionist buzzed her line. "Ms. Whitman," the woman said with practiced calm, "your parents are here. And a man who says he's your brother?" Madeline didn't speak right away. "They're downstairs," the receptionist continued. "They said it's urgent." Madeline stood slowly, her hand still resting on the mouse. Her screen glowed with unfinished charts and half-typed notes. But she wasn't surprised. The messages hadn't worked. The transfer request had been declined. The guilt had lost its sting. So, of course, they came in person. "Tell them I'm in a meeting," she said simply, "and they're not expected." There was a pause. They said they'll wait? Then let them. She ended the call and went back to the spreadsheet, finished her notes, responded to 2 emails. She even let the next Zoom meeting begin and end before she finally rose, collected her coat, and walked to the elevator with a calm that wasn't rehearsed. It was earned. The lobby was quiet when the elevator doors opened. Outside the large glass windows, the sky was a hard, pale blue, the kind that didn't care about anyone's feelings. They were exactly where she expected them. Richard stood with his arms folded, trying to look authoritative, but his eyes darted the way they always did when he wasn't in control. Eleanor clutched her purse like it was the only anchor she had left, and Cody looked tired. Not with effort, but with discomfort, like he was finally beginning to feel the weight of the role he'd been handed and didn't know how to carry. They all turned when she stepped forward. No one smiled. Eleanor spoke first. "Madeline? We just need a few minutes. You've had 30 years, she replied. Richard stiffened. Don't do this here. Madeline raised an eyebrow. Here? You came here? I was fine where I was. We didn't know what else to do, Eleanor said, voice shaky. You won't answer our calls. That's right, Madeline said, because they aren't conversations, they're transactions. Cody rubbed the back of his neck. Danny, come on! Her gaze cut to him. Don't call me that, he flinched. We're losing the house, Eleanor said again, like maybe repetition could shift the shape of the truth. It's really happening. Madeline nodded. Yes, I know. I saw the listing. Richard stepped forward, voice low but pressing. This doesn't have to end like this. She tilted her head. No? Then how should it end? We're still your parents, Eleanor whispered. And that house is still the one I paid to heat, repair, and protect for years, until you decided I didn't belong in it. The marble floor beneath them gleamed. People walked past, careful not to stare, but their glances lingered just long enough to sense something raw vibrating under the surface. A family reunion dressed in grief, guilt, and performance. Cody shifted again. No one meant for it to go this far. No, Madeline said. You just meant for me to keep holding it all up while you pretended I didn't exist. And now that she wasn't, they didn't know where to stand. Eleanor stepped closer, reaching out like she had during every family conflict, every awkward Thanksgiving, every moment she wanted to smooth something over without ever really addressing it. Please, she said, just talk to us. Upstairs, we can sit down like a family. Madeline didn't move. You mean like the family that erased me from its will? The one that watched me pay your bills and called it generosity instead of necessity? We didn't erase you, Richard said, frustration breaking through his voice. You're twisting this. She turned to him slowly. You had a folder, a notarized document, a distribution of everything you built, and somehow I was only worth one line. We trusted you, Eleanor said softly. You've always been strong. Madeline nodded, letting the words hang for a moment. You keep saying that like it's a compliment. Like it explains why I got nothing but expectation and silence. Cody cleared his throat. Look, I didn't ask for, but you didn't say no, she cut in, her tone sharp enough to stop him cold. You signed, you accepted. You let them sell me out while you played the part of the helpless son. You knew they couldn't afford the mortgage. You knew they'd already used up the insurance. But you kept taking. He looked down at his shoes. She looked back at her parents. You didn't come here because you care about talking. You came here because your safety net is gone. That's not fair, Eleanor whispered, eyes shining. No, Madeline said. What's not fair is being made responsible for a family that only sees you as useful when you're quiet. You needed me to be reliable so you could feel good about choosing him. Richard's hands curled into fists. We gave you everything. She stepped forward, voice low but unwavering. "No. You gave me just enough to survive and expected me to be grateful you didn't give less." The air between them stretched thin. "I'm not doing this anymore," she said. Eleanor's voice broke. "You'd let us lose everything?" Madeline didn't blink. "You already did, you just didn't notice when it happened." The marble echoed as she stepped back. Cody instinctively reached for the building's door, maybe hoping to follow, maybe hoping to fix it, but Madeline raised her hand, not angrily, just firmly. "Don't," she said. He froze. "You're not coming in. You're not coming up. You don't get to step into my world only when it's convenient. You don't get to knock when things fall apart and ignore me when it's quiet." Behind her, the elevator chimed again. Somewhere beyond the glass doors, the city moved on without them. "You let me out," she said, her voice like steel in velvet. "Now live with that." She turned toward the exit. "We're your family," Richard called after her. Madeline paused for half a breath. "Then maybe you should have acted like it." And with that, she walked out. Back straight, steps even, the soft hum of the glass doors sliding shut behind her. She didn't turn around, not even when she knew they were still standing there, unsure what had just happened. It wasn't rage, it wasn't revenge. It was something colder, clearer, final. It was what happened when someone who had been holding it all up let go. Madeline hadn't planned to go back, but one Sunday afternoon, her feet carried her farther than intended. The walk was aimless at first, a meandering through the familiar edges of Nashville's older neighborhoods. Then a left turn, a slight slope downward, and suddenly she was on the street where she'd grown up. Nothing had changed, and everything had. The same cracked sidewalk snaked past chain-link fences. The same rusted mailbox stood crooked in front of Mrs. Duval's house, where Cody once stole Halloween candy and claimed the raccoons got to it first. The oak tree was still there, towering and twisted, but the initials CRW plus KR had faded into the bark, nearly swallowed by time and indifference. Then she saw it. The house. Her family's home. The porch light was off. The lawn was dry, patchy, mostly dust. The flower bed she once replanted for Mother's Day was overrun with weeds. The shutters hung uneven on the windows, one of them partially missing. But the real difference was louder in its absence. The swing was gone, the one she had replaced 2 summers ago, the one she'd installed herself, spending a humid July afternoon drilling in bolts while Cody claimed back pain and disappeared mid-tag. It was the same swing her mother once called her thinking spot. Now it was just a shadow on the porch, a blank space. And still, Madeline didn't walk closer. She stood across the street, watching. There was a "for sale" sign planted in the front yard, half-tilted, weather-faded. A smaller sign beneath it read, "Price reduced." She didn't feel vindicated, didn't feel victorious, just hollow, like something had broken open weeks ago and now the pieces were too scattered to gather again. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. Instead, she studied the house. Each window like a closed eye, pretending not to see her. The ghosts of her younger self stood in that driveway. 14-year-old Madeline, carrying groceries while Cody played on the curb. 20-year-old Madeline, driving home from college after skipping a weekend with friends to help repaint the guest room. 30-year-old Madeline standing at the front door, holding a utility bill they couldn't afford and a check she couldn't afford to write. And now, 35-year-old Madeline, not climbing the porch steps, not reaching for the door. There was nothing for her inside. Whatever love had existed in those walls had long since been chipped away, repainted, and sold off in pieces. Not by accident, but by design. Her parents didn't misplace her, they removed her. And now the house, like them, was simply reaping the return. Her phone buzzed again. She finally pulled it out. Missed call. Mom. Missed call, Dad. New voicemail. She didn't play it. She could guess what it would say. Maybe a final plea. Maybe another guilt-laced line about how families forgive, how she was better than this. But she wasn't better. She was just done. She tucked the phone back into her coat pocket and stepped away from the curb. One last glance at the porch. One last memory she didn't want. Then she turned, walked away, and let the silence follow behind her like a shadow finally let go. The wind picked up. It wasn't cold, just clean. By the time Madeline reached the corner of the block, her phone buzzed again. She didn't stop walking. There was nothing urgent left for her in that direction. No emergency, no duty, just echoes. And she'd already learned that answering ghosts only made them louder. The sidewalk curved for a head toward the old elementary school. Its playground rusted, the paint on the monkey bars long since faded. She remembered walking Cody there when he was 7, dragging her own backpack while he cried about losing a toy. Their mother had stayed behind, claiming she needed rest. Their father was on a conference call. Madeline had handled it, like always. And no one remembered. Not really. The voicemail notification still hovered on her lock screen, persistent. She opened it, not to listen, but to delete. But something stopped her thumb. Not guilt, not hope, curiosity. She tapped, play. Her mother's voice came through, hushed and halting. I don't know if you'll hear this, but we're packing. The house is nearly empty now. I keep walking into rooms expecting you to be there. I don't know how we got here. I miss you. Please, just call me. Please. Then, the silence. She let the message end, then locked the screen. No tears came, no tug in her chest. It wasn't that she felt nothing. It was that she felt finally disconnected. Finally herself. Back at her apartment, she brewed tea and sat near the window, the city humming below her. The wind had picked up again, scattering golden leaves across the sidewalk. The world moved on. It always did. She opened the drawer by her desk and took out the foreclosure notice, the one she hadn't mailed back. Still folded, still sharp at the edges. She didn't read it again. She knew every line. She walked to the balcony and held it above the railing for a moment. The wind caught the paper between her fingers, tugged at it like it wanted release. She let it go. It spiraled once, then disappeared into the street below. Inside, she opened her laptop. A blank document glowed against the soft light of dusk. She typed, "Things you learn too late." And beneath it, that silence can be the most loyal companion, that forgiveness without accountability is just more harm, that walking away isn't weakness, it's inheritance in reverse, that sometimes letting go is the justice. She saved the file. No name, no explanation, just something for herself. The wind outside rattled the window once, then softened. She looked up at the sky turning indigo, the first stars shy behind the haze. Her phone sat untouched across the room. They might call again. They might try one last performance, a plea, a post, a prayer crafted for public sympathy. But she had already rewritten her ending. She wasn't the background anymore. She wasn't the safety net. She was the one who walked away quietly, deliberately, fully. And maybe they would never understand. But that was no longer her responsibility. She took a breath, deep, slow, whole, and closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was missing from something. She felt like she had arrived. Thank you for watching Madeline's story 1 of quiet resilience, painful awakening, and the power of choosing yourself when no one else will. If you've ever carried the emotional weight of a family that only sees your worth in what you give, you are not alone. This story is for the fixers, the forgotten, the ones written out but never erased. Madeline didn't shout. She didn't seek revenge in the traditional sense. She walked away, and in doing so reclaimed something far more valuable than inheritance: her voice. Family isn't just who raises you, it's who recognizes you. And when that recognition never comes, it's okay to stop performing for the approval that will never arrive. It's okay to let the swing stay gone. It's okay to burn no bridges, but also build none back. This story doesn't end in reconciliation. It ends in clarity. And sometimes, that's the most powerful ending of all. If this story moved you, share it. Not for views, but because someone out there is still picking up prescriptions from people who've already erased them from the will. And they deserve to know they're seen. And if you are that person, we see you. Thank you for showing up. For yourself, finally. Stay strong, stay clear, and never forget, sometimes letting go is the love you needed all along.